Welcome to the Mind and Body Understanding podcast, hosted by Jeff Pharion and brought to you by Pharion Counseling LLC, presented by the Foolproof Entertainment Network. Jeff,
Reg?
How are we doing this week?
Oh, wow. It's been quite a week. The temperature went from 20-something to 50-something in a day, and everything that we broke behind our house as far as ice was concerned is all melted and gone. I don't know. It's good to be here and good to be doing this. We've got a couple of podcast shows to put together today, and I'm very pleased and privileged to have my supervisor in counseling, Molly Fields, with us. She's a 20-plus year counselor. She's become quite an entrepreneur in that she runs and operates a building filled with counselors. It's her building. An expert in existentialism. She got me interested in it. In fact, she helped me develop the idea of AIR. She's responsible for the ideas behind attachment. It's associated with self-identity and self-regulation. She's pretty much building my mind for me a little bit. So it's my privilege to introduce Molly Fields. Hi, Molly.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I feel privileged to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Just so the audience can know, Molly, just give us a little bit about you, your background in counseling, and some of the things you truly believe in as far as helping people.
Yeah, so from as far back as I can remember, when I was a little girl, I used to line up my dolls in my bedroom, and I had an office, and I would sit the dolls in front of me and help them. And I spent more time with the dolls that had the nappy hair or the crazy floppy arms because I thought they had more issues. Because at that point, that was the only defining way I could, evaluate people is based on how they looked. And so my dolls, if they looked like a mess, they got more attention. And so from early on, I was just a person who was sort of set in the world to help people. And as I grew older, I felt like maybe it wasn't, I don't know, I didn't think, can I be a therapist? I don't know that I thought that was a realistic option, but I knew that I wanted to help people, so I became a social worker and worked in a homeless shelter for 4 years with homeless people and did case management, and we did a lot of throwing money and resources at people that didn't really help because they had bigger issues than what we were able to help them with, and the recidivism rate was high, and it was really discouraging. So I decided I really wanted to go back to school and become a therapist because I felt like people had issues inside that all the things that we could do for them outside were not going to fix. And so I was interested in the inside-out work, and so that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. Is I finished grad school in 2000 and have started a private practice in 2002, and I just feel like I have been helping people with their internal worlds in order to help their external worlds work better.
Well, that's great. We're going to get into great detail with some of that today. Back when I was a kid, I just took the Batman doll, and he would date Barbie, and they'd get in the Batmobile and go to the drive-in movie or something. I didn't think about helping them psychologically. So it's interesting that you started that way, thinking about it that way. We wanted to talk about what's the point today. This episode's called What's the Point? And that's a great existential question. And Molly is going to help us learn about an existential crises and what those things mean, how the pandemic and politics can add to existential crises. So, Molly, first of all, what is existential crisis, and what does that mean to people?
It's a crisis of meaning. It's that people don't know what the point is. Why are we here? What are we doing here? Why do I keep breathing and showing up in the world, right? And so it's a crisis of that, a crisis of existence.
Yeah, I meet many clients on my own now that I've been practicing for a couple of years, and it seems they don't know who they are because maybe they don't know why they are. I mean, I'm not sure if that makes sense to you, but learning about what the meaning of life, isn't that the ultimate question of all time, though? The meaning of life? Isn't that what people have been struggling with, fighting wars over? It's just amazing. And then now we have this pandemic, and it makes people even more introspective. What do you think?
Yeah, it's added. Life is already hard and already complicated, and everybody comes to a different idea of why they are, in different ways for different reasons. And so, but then when you add in the isolation and the complexity and the difficulties of a pandemic, it just, makes things, it maximizes all of the problems in people's lives. And so we're definitely busy in the therapy world and definitely seeing problems and issues that there's no precedence for. It's kind of unprecedented territory.
Yeah, and then we threw on top of pandemic the political turmoil, the racial turmoil. I mean, who's to say what is better, what is worse, what is good, what is bad as far as how we live our lives? And people have been searching for that. So maybe if you can tell us a little bit, discuss a little bit about how people and how you help people seek the reason for being. How do you help them?
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. Part of what shaped my interest in existentialism is reading Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for a Meaning, which is, for the audience members, Viktor Frankl was a Jewish psychiatrist who was in the Auschwitz camp, in the concentration camp during the Holocaust, and he survived, but none of his family did. He lost his wife and his kids in that. But he came out of it writing a book about kind of an existentialism kind of a book, how to get perspective. And I want to read a quote by him because I thought this was really, it kind of enwraps what we're talking about today. There is nothing in the world, I venture to say, that would so effectively help one to survive even the worst conditions and the knowledge that there is meaning, and as there is knowledge that there is meaning in our lives. There is nothing in the world, I venture to say, that would so effectively help us to survive even the worst conditions as the knowledge that there is meaning in our lives. So basically he's saying he was able to survive the camp and the horrific things because he could find meaning in the suffering, and he could find meaning that there was going to be a better life ahead. And so, being able to give people a vision for a better life ahead, and even meaning inside of the worst conditions, the worst situations in their lives, is really at the heart of this existential.
So how can you relate that to, a 21st century client that comes to you and says, Molly, I really, I'm just struggling with my own self. I really don't even understand myself and what I'm supposed to do with this life. I've got all these troubles. I've had deaths in my family. I've had all this stuff. How do I come to some kind of clarity with who I am and what I'm supposed to do? What do you say to a person?
Yeah, so that's where my job is to help them become an expert on themselves. We want them to develop some curiosity and some interest in figuring themselves out. How do they tick? What goes on in their world? What's happening in there? A lot of times people just have no even awareness of how their mind works, or how to control it, or even what's going on in there, or even what their values or their beliefs or their suffering is. And so helping them have a venue to discuss that and to figure that out, to sort out all of that stuff, and then to kind of get a direction and a momentum towards something else is pretty exciting work. It's the best. I mean, I go to work every day thinking, let's go. And sometimes I'll go into the waiting room and say, let's go. Because I want people to have a sense that, we're doing something here, we're doing big work in this hour, that then you can go and take and, give to everybody else.
It is better talking about things like that with a positive, outburst of energy and being, enthusiastic about trying to help them, as opposed to, okay, who's next? We're going to talk about, I don't know, what are you depressed about this week, Bill? How does anxiety and depression fit into the reason for being question? How does that fit in?
Well, it certainly dampens it. It certainly darkens the picture of meaning. It kind of almost stifles it. And so we want to work on those issues almost parallel. So we're working on identity and existential things, and how do we make your life make sense and be interesting and fun and cool, right? But then we also want to work on how do we get you feeling better so that it's not so much work to do this other stuff, So it's kind of parallel processes of getting rid of the gunk, the depression, the anxiety, and then developing this really cool world for themselves.
Is there any technique or way of thinking that you use to help them flip that idea in
there's
their
all
mind?
kinds of techniques and inventions. There's a lot of cognitive restructuring, kind of rebuilding, and that sounds psychobabblish for the audience, but a rebuilding of their thinking processes. And then I don't know, in the second episode we're going to talk more about this, but this idea that they can manage pain better and all kinds of techniques for managing pain better so that it isn't so distracting. And then I talk too a lot about, are you re-evolving or evolving, or surviving or thriving, this idea that we can choose, one avenue or another, and then helping them sort out, what are your behaviors and and attitudes and thoughts that are in survivor mode, and what are your attitudes and thoughts and stuff that are in thriving mode, and being able to figure out how they can make choices one way or the other.
I like evolving and revolving. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, so revolving is just circular thinking, circular life, right? Keep doing the same stuff over and over and hoping for a different result. It's painful. It's painful for them. It's painful for everybody else to watch, right? So where evolving is like, I'm moving forward. I'm actualizing. I'm growing. I'm becoming something else. And it feels like there's a sense of momentum and hope in that.
Interesting. I've noticed, especially in the few clients that are couples that I've worked with, that people question their choices in life a lot. And the couples, they're questioning their relationships, of course, but they question, why did I pick the job and the career that I have? Why did I start a family, for gosh sakes? Why do I have this smoking habit that I can't get rid of? How do you discuss the secrets that you have with existentialism and deal with questions about life decisions?
Well, I encourage people to question. I mean, I think that's at the heart of change, is to question ourselves and our past. And people say to me, "Oh, I don't have any regrets." I think, really? Like, I don't know. We should probably have some regrets. Like, there's things that I would have.
You might want to think about whether or not you have regrets.
Yeah. So to me, I'm like, well, if people have made bad decisions, like regarding, let's say they're dissatisfied with like where they're working or who they're hanging out with or who they've chosen as their family, that's good stuff. That's like, I mean, that's good material for change, because we can only change what we're willing to look at.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that you talked to me about previously that I really like is the difference between playing it safe and taking risks. And I think that's a big part of living. A lot of people just play it with the reserve, card. They stay at home. Like, I know people in the pandemic, they're staying home. They're not going out in public. They don't trust other people. They don't want to interact with other people. And
they're completely dissatisfied.
Absolutely.
I mean, dissatisfaction, playing it safer,
almost hand in hand.
Yeah. So I want to, get people to take chances and take risks and, be curious about the world and about what they can do in it, and that they're intentional in their life, that they're choosing. Like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then they go after it. And next I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go after that, rather than just sort of letting life happen. People just sort of let life happen. We want to, like, grab it by the,
Grab the bull by the horn.
That was the phrase I'm sure she was going for.
Right.
You gotta keep it interesting.
Absolutely. But sure. And taking risks, though, I mean, do you really go into a counseling situation and tell someone to take risks?
All the time.
So what would be an example of that?
Well, I mean, I tell people they've got to experiment, because we have to try things on to see what fits. Whether that's for relationships or hobbies or activities or jobs or school or anything. We have to, like, okay, let me try that on and see if it works. If it fits, I'll keep it. If it doesn't fit, I can take it off. I can get rid of it. And so, brainstorming and coming up with ideas and coming up with new stuff for them to go after, that's part of it.
I want to bring our She Shed guru in, Lisa, because I know you're probably stewing on 2 or 3 questions about this, Lisa. How are you doing, by the way?
I'm doing pretty good.
What from this conversation has sparked thoughts in your mind? What are you thinking about?
I agree with a lot of what she's saying. I guess it's more the challenge. I don't know how she said it. Like, to encourage people to test things out.
Experiment.
But yes, but when you get to a state of depression and anxiety, that desire is very, very hard to obtain. How do you get past that?
Well, and that's kind of why I was saying the parallel process that we're working on the depression and anxiety. We're doing things to manage that, but then we're also doing, like, hey, let's live a life that's interesting. Let's not just do pain management. Let's not just do, crisis control, right? Let's develop something that you can be proud of and excited about. So they go together. I mean, if we were doing a focus solely in this hour on depression and anxiety management, I probably would focus more on that. But because we've got, we're kind of doing time management, I've just kind of focused on the other pieces, the existential pieces. But I'm sure that Jeff's going to ask me back, and we'll be doing lots of shows together.
Sure.
So we could do one primarily on that, if that helps.
No, I mean, I have really not a whole lot of questions because I've agreed with pretty much everything you've said of how dealing with things. So the she shed is coming up blank, I guess you could say.
Oh man, I
That's
left you
not bad.
speechless.
You
You're
did.
that good,
You left me
Molly.
Well,
speechless.
The thing that that's hard to do, Molly. The thing that is driving my brain within existentialism, because when Molly introduced me to Viktor Frankl, I fell in love with it. And she and I have gotten along since our first meeting and have been working together for almost 3 years now. And it's a matter of
Just wait till you get to 10.
yeah. Wait a minute, Reggie.
I'm exhausted already.
There's always a new trick every day. That's what's fun, Reg. But I can't exact Viktor Frankl's experience in Auschwitz with what's going on with the pandemic. But you can say what a person in a pandemic situation right now is at a much lesser degree dealing with the isolation, the worry, the questioning about, why am I here and why is this even happening when things like a pandemic can exist in my world and politicians can ruin or take away some of the authority I have over my own life. What's the point of me even being alive and doing what I'm supposed to do every day? I mean, that to me, I see millions of people asking that during a pandemic. I don't just see one or two.
Right.
So, and they're not exactly flooding, at least my office. I don't know about you, Molly, but I don't see them coming in and saying, why? I see them with more specific, questions and concerns. So where do you, in your daily clientele, and I'm not asking for any specific information, but just generally, where do you see questioning existence?
Well, okay, so that's a really good question, Jeff. You're right. People don't come in and ask the right questions. That's why we're there, so we can lead them to the right questions. Because when people start asking the right questions, then that's when the game changes.
Sure.
That's when people really start to move in the right direction. So you're right. People come in and they ask questions about, this situation with this person or this behavior or this issue that happened last week, but they're not asking the big picture stuff. So we're going to deal with the little picture stuff too, but we really got to get to the big picture stuff, because if not, we're just case managers or expensive friends who are going to give advice for the week, right? And I don't want to give advice for the week. I want to give hey, let's construct your life in a different way. Let's construct your internal world in a different way. One of the other quotes that I really liked by Frankl was, when we're no longer able to change the situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That's a pretty big deal, and that's where I want to live in the office that I'm in, is I want to live with people being able to look at themselves and figure out all the changes that they can make and not get too stuck in the situational drama that exists around them.
I have that quote on my website.
It's good, right?
Yeah, I like that one.
He's good.
Well, and it's interesting on that front too. It's the same way that I, in terms of direct reports that I have at, my day job, and a lot of my messaging to them ends up being control what you can control. You can control how you respond. You can control how the message is delivered. You can't necessarily control how people react to it, and you can't control other people's behavior.
Right.
You can try to influence it, but at the end of the day, control what you can control. And we talk about that a lot in the football field too, in terms of overcoming adversity and do your job and
tackle the guy with the ball.
Right.
Well, and to me, the bigger the mess around you, the harder your relationships are or your situations are, the more there is to you can do within yourself, because it challenges you have to kind of push harder. You kind of have to think differently. You have to feel differently. You have to really get all that stuff in order, because you can't not. The world's not going to allow you to play safe or to take it easy, which is good in my opinion.
I think it takes a long time to come to a full sense of self, and I don't know that anyone really does all the way up to their death even, to have a full sense of who they are and where they belong in this world. I think that's a big part of it too, because existentialism to me, as I study it and learn more about it, becomes more about what can I make this world as opposed to what is this world to me.
Yes.
And getting clients, I don't think Lisa has a lot of questions right now, because right now Lisa is fully ingrained in being a very good mother, wife, sister to her brothers and sisters, daughter. She has a full life with just her relationships, and she probably doesn't think about some of the other things that we're talking about. So she probably feels sustained, happy because of her children and husband, especially. Am I close on that, Lisa?
You are kind of how you said about the control thing. I have had to learn two things. I've had to learn I cannot control the actions of others. I can only control my actions.
Right.
And that's kind of what you guys were talking about. But I also have like a 24-hour rule. I try not to, I had to learn not to speak out of haste or anger and give my brain time to process something before I guess I go and state something. Does that make sense?
You wait a whole day.
Typically if it's bad, yeah, I'll wait 24 hours.
So if you have something that really distresses you, you'll pause and reflect and sleep on it.
Basically, yes.
I like that.
Your spouse will let you do that? Mine doesn't necessarily let me get away with the whole day.
Right.
Well, they know when I'm quiet, there's something.
I get
So
it. I get it.
they kind of know that I'm kind of going things over in my head because I do get a little quiet when it comes to something really big, like I guess substantial.
That's a good perspective.
And I think that's important to kind of know about yourself. Like I learned a long time ago that I'm a processor. I want to hear what the message is and then let myself kind of take the time with it. Otherwise, you end up with the Reggie that Jeff knew back in high school and college that was a little more rash and a little quicker to bubble over. Now I've learned to let things process and calm down first.
Yeah. The other thing, Lisa, and Molly and everybody, it's important to understand that we can't always control what flies through our head either, those thoughts. But we can learn to control them. We can learn to deal with them. And that's the big part that I'm learning about myself in counseling is that teaching people how to control their brain processes, which is very difficult because it's not easy. I have difficulty with it myself every day because thoughts come racing. How do I control that environment? And to be able to calm your body and wait a day to talk to somebody, that's a great part of it because you could have just blurted out that thought that went into your mind when something bad was said to you. And that's good. But it's how do I control all of those things? The negative thoughts, the self-shaming, all the things that maybe put you in that negative, depressive mood. Molly, what are your thoughts?
It starts with just paying attention, like having an awareness of what's going on. Like just kind of, taking a deep breath and going, okay, what's going on inside of me right now? And then making intentional choices of what you're going to do with that. Whether that means in 24 hours you send the message or you make the call or you do that, or whether you just sort of work it through inside yourself. But it starts with awareness.
I love the words intentional choices because that means the choice was intended. And I know it's repeating exactly what you're saying, but my thought on that is because I've never been yelled at more than when I told someone it wasn't my intentions to hurt your feelings. Right. When I'd already hurt their feelings. They're like, well, what the hell are you doing then? And so that happened a few years ago, and that moment has made me intentionally think about my next step, words, actions. It doesn't always work, and Mike can probably attest to some of it. Molly probably can attest to some of it, but Lisa can probably attest to some of it. But I'm really trying to not step without thinking about it first, and that's. Once again, part of, I don't know how we got down this rabbit hole, but that's another part of being in control of oneself, being able to manage and create your own world.
Yeah, because if you can't control yourself, you're not going to be very effective at controlling your world.
No.
So the more you're in charge of you, the more that you can design and set up what you want to in your world.
Yeah, and to the point, Jeff, you had kind of talked about the idea of learning to control your thoughts. I almost look at it more just like controlling the response to your thoughts, right? In terms of you may always have thoughts that creep in like that, but how you respond to them is one thing. And then coming into the other half of it, talking about intentional choices and those kind of things, the way I relate to that the most is my choice is to respond quickly to an email and not actually send it. so where you type out that email where you're like, you mother... No, you can't send that.
I've typed hundreds. When I was head football coach way back when, I've typed hundreds of response emails that I've deleted.
That have never been sent.
Oh,
Yep.
text.
Text,
That's
too.
I don't even bother with text. That's the first thing that I talk to clients about. Are you? How are you communicating with your spouse? Text. Stop doing that. Just don't even respond. It's either talk to them or don't talk to them.
I was gonna say a minute ago, that kind of goes back to what we were talking about, that revolving versus evolving.
Yeah.
It's like if it revolves around and they're the same way, you're gonna have the same response over and over again, right? You're gonna do what you normally do. But if it's evolving, then you're gonna, like you guys were talking about, which is, hey, let me think about this differently. Let me make a change. Let me have a different outcome because I have different behaviors. That would be evolving. That's big. And all of those little tiny things don't seem like a big deal, but they all add up to a big life change, to changes in the success of your relationships, the success of your career, the success of your whatever.
And when people come to me with regrets, and like I have a client I'm working with right now that has regrets about his job. It's like, well, what kind of job do you want? Oh, no, I'm not worthy of any kind of, I don't have the qualifications. I don't have this. I don't have that. Well, it's not like you can't go get the qualifications or learn about those things or do and where's all the negative thoughts coming from? From his own head. From his own brain. It's making him hold back from who he can really become.
But people get stuck in that analysis paralysis, right? Where it's like, well, I can think and think and think and never do. And I always tell people, take imperfect action. It's better to take action that's imperfect than do nothing. Because we don't regret as much what we do. We mostly regret what we don't do. When I think about people in my office who are sitting with their regrets of things, it's what they haven't done more so, not always, but more so than what they have done that they regret. So to me, take imperfect action. Go after it and see what happens.
There's that book out there, 80-20, right? Where 80% is perfect. And I've learned that from the marketing company I'm working with.
Absolutely.
Because I set myself up for failure when I put 100 things on the list and I do, even if I only did 99, I'm beating myself up. But I usually only get to like 30 of them. And they're saying, make it reasonable, realistic, don't have more than 15 things to do in a week, and get 80% of them done. And then you're going to feel so much better. We're going to have 12 things done out of 15. And that's great. That's progress. That's moving forward. And that makes the world shine brighter for you. When you get things done, you feel better, and you feel like you're getting somewhere, even if it's only one thing on your list. I remember when I started teaching college writing, just getting that first paper graded, I felt better. No matter how terrible the paper was and how long it took me to grade it, I felt like I got a step further.
That's why I still have a Franklin planner. Yes, I still use a Franklin planner. Partly because I like to be able to check everything off there. I like to be able to look at the week and go, look what I did. Like I accomplished that. And there's something about sort of having accomplished things.
You should see it. It's 6 feet thick,
Red.
You should have brought it.
I never go anywhere without it,
It's
honestly.
weighing the car down outside.
No, I took my kids to Disney World in 2015, and I took the planner, and you know how you can only take so much on a plane, and it took up like half of my carry-on. I'm like, it's got to go.
Okay, so this isn't going to be the longest of podcasts, this first one, but I do want Molly, and if Lisa wants to chime in and talk, Mike too, but I do want to finish with the idea of how do we get people thinking more positively about their existence? Let's just have a basic idea about that.
Well, we get them curious,
Curious, I like that.
and we get them hopeful.
Hopeful.
And some of that has to do with the therapeutic alliance, right?
Oh, yeah.
It has to do with, like, getting them, you have to be believable, and
Oh, yeah.
getting them to believe you and trust you and connect with you. That's the most critical component to someone being able to, like, want to do the work with you.
So tell me if I'm wrong in doing this or not, Molly, because you're my supervisor. So I should ask you this question anyways, privately, but I'll
I'm
do it
charging
publicly
you for
here. Okay, yeah, I'll get my checkbook out. I've switched to, in my intake sessions, to starting to use some of that language. We need to make sure that we become in this, not in an alliance, but that you become trusting of me and I become trusting of you, so that we can move forward together in progressing towards what you want to accomplish with your health.
Yep.
That's the language I've been using with my clients.
Yeah. Yeah, because fear is not helpful. People being scared or uncomfortable is not going to do the
But
job.
presenting it that way, do you think that's
Sounds good.
off-putting?
No, I think that's great. I
What, does that sound off-putting, Lisa?
Um, I think human nature is honestly afraid of change.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's off-putting, but I like when you gotta get the pep talks to
Yeah.
try something new. I guess is maybe where I struggle, and maybe I don't understand where you guys are coming from.
Okay.
If
So
that makes sense.
it's not as easy for you to get in line with, I'm going to choose better things, or I've really got a positive attitude about this. I understand what you're saying.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, that's a core piece. But if I was to tell someone in one sentence what I'm doing with people or what my goal is with people, is to get people to know the truth about themselves and the world around them. Mm-hmm. So when I'm thinking about getting people to their truth about themselves and the world around them, which is different for everybody, then I'm thinking about I've got to set the foundation for that. And the foundation for that is the relationship and is a sense of hopefulness that things can get better, that we can figure this out together.
I like that. We will pick this idea up in our next episode and carry it further a little bit, I'd imagine. But Molly, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been very exciting. Lisa, once again, of course, thank you. Reg, as always, thank you, sir. And we'll be back with another episode with Molly Fields.
This has been the Mind and Body Understanding podcast, hosted by Jeff Pharion, brought to you by Pharion Counseling LLC, and presented by the Foolproof Entertainment Network. Find us over on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, anywhere you can find podcasts at Mind and Body Understanding, or search for Foolproof Entertainment Network. Thank you.
We out.